I always thought talent would be enough. 30 years designing for a late fashion house, countless awards, and a client list that read like a Hollywood guest list. Surely that would count for something. But as I sat in my studio, reading the email from Marcus Wright, our new creative director, I realized how wrong I'd been. Dear Linda, while we appreciate your years of service, a lit fashion house is moving in a bold new direction. Your traditional aesthetic no longer aligns with our vision for the future. Your position is terminated effective immediately. HR will contact you regarding severance. Best, Marcus. My name is Linda Chen, and at 55, I'd just been fired by email from the fashion house I'd helped build. My crime? Being too traditional in an industry obsessed with youth and trend chasing. I looked around my studio, my former studio now, at the sketches that had earned a late fashion house its reputation for timeless elegance. The wedding dress that had graced 3 magazine covers last spring. The evening gown that had stolen the show at the Met Gala. All apparently too old-fashioned for Marcus's brave new world. 20 minutes, the security guard said apologetically, hovering in my doorway. Mr. Wright wants the studio cleared for the new designer by noon. I nodded, trying to maintain my dignity as I began packing 30 years into a cardboard box. My sketchbooks, my fabric samples, my collection of vintage fashion plates that had inspired so many designs, all unceremoniously boxed up like outdated inventory. Don't forget this, Sarah from accounting whispered, slipping into my studio. She handed me a leather-bound portfolio I'd never seen before. Your original sketches from the past 3 collections. I made copies before Marcus could lose them like he did with Jean's work when he fired her. Of course, Jean had been the first to go when Marcus arrived 6 months ago, fresh from some trendy startup with big plans to disrupt the fashion industry. Then Patricia from textiles. Now me. All of us over 50, all replaced by designers barely out of fashion school. Thanks, Sarah, I said, tucking a portfolio into my box. Watch your back. You might be next on his list. She smiled grimly. Already updated my LinkedIn, but Linda? She hesitated, glancing around before continuing in a whisper. Have you seen the sketches for the new collection? The ones they're showing at Fashion Week next month? I shook my head. Marcus had kept the new designs under strict lock and key, claiming they would revolutionize the industry. Let's just say, Sarah continued, some of them look familiar, especially the silhouettes. Almost like he's seen them somewhere before. Before she could elaborate, heels clicked on the hardwood floor outside. Melissa Wright, Marcus's 23-year-old daughter and newly appointed brand innovation director, appeared in the doorway, designer handbag swinging. Daddy needs the studio cleared like now, she announced, not bothering to look up from her phone. The new team has a brainstorming session at 1. I picked up my box, conscious of every award and achievement that was being erased with my departure. As I walked toward the door, I noticed my latest sketchbook, the one containing my designs for next year's spring collection, sitting on my old desk. Oh, that's trash, Melissa said, finally glancing up. Daddy says we're done with that outdated stuff. Here, she grabbed the sketchbook and tossed it toward the recycling bin. It missed, falling open to reveal the designs I'd spent months perfecting. For a moment, something flickered across Melissa's face as she looked at the sketches. Interest? Recognition? But it vanished quickly behind her practiced indifference. Security will escort you out, she said, already turning away. Thanks for everything and stuff. In the elevator, clutching my box of memories, I thought about Sarah's warning about the new collection, about the way Melissa had looked at my sketches, about the strange secrecy surrounding Marcus's revolutionary designs. My phone buzzed. A message from Isabella Martinez, my former assistant who quit in protest when Marcus arrived. Call me ASAP. Found something you need to see. Outside, New York's fashion district buzzed with its usual energy. Workers pushed racks of clothing between buildings, designers hurried to meetings clutching portfolios, and everywhere, preparations were underway for next month's Fashion Week. Fashion Week, where Marcus would debut his groundbreaking collection. Where a lit fashion house would show the world its bold new direction, where perhaps some interesting truths might come to light. I hailed the cab, my mind already working on possibilities. Martinez Design Studio. I told the driver, thinking about the portfolio Sarah had saved, about the sketchbook Melissa had thrown away, about 30 years of designs that lived not just on paper, but in my head. Isabella was waiting outside her small studio, practically bouncing with nervous energy. "You're not going to believe this," she said, pulling me inside. "Remember that intern Marcus hired last month? The one who seemed too nervous to actually be an intern." I nodded, setting down my box of belongings. Amy something said she was from some design school in California. "Well, she's not," Isabella said, pulling up something on her computer. "She's a journalist for Fashion Forward magazine, working undercover for an expose on ageism in the industry, and she's been documenting everything." The screen showed emails, photos, and what looked like recordings. "Marcus has been systematically pushing out experienced designers across the industry," Isabella explained. "Not just at Elate. He's got some kind of network, young designers who take over and then mysteriously come up with innovative collections that look suspiciously like their predecessors' work." I stared at the evidence, pieces clicking into place. The secretive new collection. The familiar silhouettes Sarah mentioned. The way Melissa had looked at my sketchbook. "Fashion Week is in 4 weeks," Isabella said, watching my face. "Marcus is planning to debut his collection as a triumph of young vision over outdated tradition." But she smiled wickedly. "We might have some other plans for that runway." My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. "Ms. Chen? This is Amy Chen from Fashion Forward. I think we need to talk about Marcus Wright and the future of fashion design. Are you interested in helping me tell a different kind of story?" I looked at Isabella, then at my box of 30 years experience, then at the evidence on the screen. Marcus wanted to talk about tradition versus innovation. About old versus new. Fine. Let's have that conversation. But first, I had some calls to make. Starting with every designer Marcus had retired in the past 6 months. Because if he wanted to show the world the future of fashion, we might just have something to say about that. The game wasn't over. It was just moving to a bigger runway. And this time, everyone would see exactly who was copying whom. Isabella was already on her phone, sending messages. "Jen's in, so was Patricia. We've got a studio space we can use, and I know people at Fashion Week who owe me favors." I opened my saved portfolio, fingers tracing the designs that had made a late fashion house famous. Designs that, apparently, weren't quite as outdated as Marcus claimed. "One more thing," Isabella said, pulling up another email. "The venue for Elite's show? They're having technical issues. The only available replacement date is right after the slot I just happened to book for a special showcase of emerging talent." I smiled, already sketching ideas in my mind. "Tell Amy I'll meet with her, and Isabella, call everyone. All the outdated designers Marcus has discarded. Tell them to bring their sketchbooks, their portfolios, and their anger. Because sometimes the best way to deal with being called old-fashioned is to show exactly how timeless true talent can be." And Fashion Week was about to get very, very interesting. The next 3 weeks were a blur of activity. Isabella's studio, once a modest workspace, had transformed into a war room of creative rebellion. Designers Marcus had discarded from across the industry gathered there, each bringing stories of suspicious terminations and stolen designs. "Look at this," Jean said, spreading out her original sketches next to photos from her former company's latest collection. They didn't even bother changing the seam lines, just added some trendy details and called it revolutionary. Patricia from Textiles had brought something even more damning: fabric orders that proved Elite was using her proprietary techniques while claiming they were new innovations developed by their young talent. Amy, our undercover journalist, documented everything. "This isn't just about ageism," she said, reviewing her notes. "It's systematic intellectual property theft. They're counting on experienced designers being too demoralized to fight back." But we weren't demoralized. We were angry, focused, and more importantly, we were creating something new. Something that would show exactly what experience and innovation really looked like. "The collection is almost ready," Isabella announced one evening, 2 weeks before Fashion Week. "But we still need a showstopper. Something that will make it impossible to deny what Marcus has done." I smiled, pulling out my original sketchbook, the one Melissa had tried to throw away. "I think I have just the thing. Remember that experimental technique I was working on? The one that combines traditional handwork with modern technology?" The design I showed them drew gasps. It was a wedding dress, but unlike anything the industry had seen. Delicate hand embroidery merged seamlessly with 3D printed elements. Traditional silk draping incorporated smart fabric that could change color subtly as the model moved. This is what I was developing when Marcus fired me, I explained. He never saw the final design, but I pulled up photos on my tablet. He's advertising something suspiciously similar as the centerpiece of his collection. Except his version doesn't work, Patricia interjected. I saw the prototypes before I left. They couldn't figure out how to make the smart fabric integrate properly with the traditional elements. That's why everything's been so secret. They're still trying to copy your technique. Amy was practically vibrating with excitement. So if you debut the real version first. Exactly, Isabella finished. They'll have to either pull their cheap copy or risk showing it after everyone's seen the original. The next week passed in a frenzy of preparation. Word spread through the industry's back channels about our special showcase. Major buyers and critics began requesting invitations. Even some of Elite's longtime clients started asking questions about why their favorite designers had suddenly disappeared. 3 days before Fashion Week, I received an unexpected visit. Melissa Wright stood in Isabella's studio doorway, looking considerably less confident than she had during my firing. "The dress," she said without preamble. "The one from your sketchbook. Dad's going crazy trying to make his version work. The whole collection is built around it, but nothing's coming together." I set down my pins, studying her carefully. And I knew it was wrong. When he showed me the new designs, I recognized them from your work. From all of your work. She gestured around the studio at the other designers. I thought fashion was supposed to be about creating something new, not just stealing and repackaging. "It is," I said quietly. "That's exactly what it's supposed to be about." She pulled out her phone, showing us photos of Elite's collection in progress. "The show's in 3 days. Nothing's ready. Dad's talking about canceling, claiming technical difficulties." I thought, "Miggy, you thought you'd warn us?" Jean asked skeptically. "I thought I'd finally do the right thing," Melissa corrected. "I brought these too." She handed over a USB drive. Every email, every file showing where the designs really came from. Amy's not the only one who's been keeping records. The day of our show arrived bright and clear. The venue was packed. Every major fashion editor, buyer, and critic in attendance. In the front row, I spotted Marcus, trying to look confident but betrayed by his nervous fidgeting. The lights dimmed. The music started. And then we showed them what real innovation looked like. Each piece told a story of experience meeting imagination. Traditional techniques elevated by modern vision. Timeless elegance enhanced by cutting-edge technology. Not a rejection of the past, but a bridge to the future. When the final piece, my wedding dress, appeared, the audience fell silent for 3 heartbeats, then erupted in applause. The smart fabric shifted colors like aurora borealis, while the hand-embroidered details caught light in ways that made the dress seem to float. In the front row, Marcus had gone pale. Beside him, Melissa stood up and walked backstage, joining the group of designers taking our final bow. What followed was fashion industry earthquake. Amy's exposure ran the next day, complete with Melissa's evidence and testimonials from designers across the industry. Elite's show was canceled, their collection revealed as a series of stolen designs. But more importantly, something fundamental shifted. The conversation about experience versus youth, about tradition versus innovation, transformed into something more nuanced. Major houses began reaching out, not just to us, but to other experienced designers who'd been sidelined. 6 months later, I sat in my new studio at Chen Design House. The company Isabella and I had founded together. On my desk, magazines featured our latest collection. "The future of fashion is timeless," one headline read. "Experience meets innovation in groundbreaking collection." Melissa interned with us that season, learning what real design innovation meant. Other young designers followed, eager to learn from experience rather than replace it. Marcus, last I heard, he'd left the industry entirely. The lawsuits from stolen designs had effectively ended his career. The irony of being outdated by his own actions wasn't lost on anyone. Elite Fashion House survived under new leadership that understood the value of both experience and innovation. They even asked me to consult occasionally, an offer I politely declined. I was too busy building something new. The wedding dress that had exposed Marcus's fraud now stood in a museum exhibition about fashion innovation. Beside it, a plaque read, "Innovation doesn't mean rejecting tradition. It means understanding it deeply enough to transform it. Young designers still come to my studio, portfolios in hand, eager to learn. They don't see an outdated designer anymore. They see someone who proved that true innovation comes from knowledge, not just novelty. And when they ask about the dress that changed everything, I tell them it's not just about the design. It's about understanding that fashion, like any art, isn't divided into old and new, traditional and modern. It's about having the wisdom to honor the past while creating the future. And sometimes, the most revolutionary act isn't throwing away tradition. It's showing exactly how timeless it can be. Isabella poked her head into my office, excitement in her eyes. The new apprentices are here, ready to show them how we bridge the generations. I smiled, picking up my sketchbook, a new one, but with the same passion for design that had driven me for 30 years. Always. After all, that's what real innovation looks like. Together, we walked into the studio where young designers waited to learn from experience. Because that's how fashion really evolves, not by discarding the past, but by building on it, one stitch at a time.